Good morning, Michael. What happened to Michael? Michael left me this morning, dadgummit. He is actually at the Capitol with his daughter this morning. She's getting an award at the Capitol. So that's where he is this morning. So you're stuck with me by myself. I think we're going to have a really great show this morning. And I think I'm going to start it off this way. So if you have not seen the budget yet, and I should have actually thrown up here, we can do this so that you guys can see this. Okay, here in just a second, we're going to bring on Brice and Marie, and we're going to talk about our lawsuit with Stillwater Public Schools, but kind of in preparation for that, let's just do a quick, I'll share my screen with you, and I'll show you what I was looking at this morning. There you go. Has anybody seen this? This is very fascinating. This is because we're all transparent now, don't forget. So this is the budget. This is the appropriation budget subcommittees in our state. And so you can sit here and watch these numbers changing over here. It's really kind of fascinating because they're taking things away and adding things. But I just want you to look at the number. This hasn't deviated too terribly much since I started watching it this morning at about 4:45. $13.18 billion. And I think this is really interesting because if you look at education, which is the what we're on right now, this is the page that we're on. In all honesty, they do have it really easy for you to figure out education, finances, general government. You go through the whole thing and look at this, but I just want to point out. So let's scroll. Okay, this is just education now, mind you. We're scrolling. I see a $3 million for the Oklahoma Arts Council because don't forget, it's our job as taxpayers to pay for the arts. No, we don't want anybody donating for that. The state has to pay for that. So $3 million for that. Oklahoma Center for Advanced Science and Tech. I don't even know what that is, but they got a whopping $16 million for general. Oh, that was their 24 appropriation. Their increase is $1.5 million. So Oklahoma Television Authority looks like their appropriation was $2 million, but it looks like they're going to cut some. So if you go all the way down to the bottom, so the agency requests came up to nearly for, and I'm going to check and make sure. Okay, so there's 100,000, there's million, almost 4 billion with a B for education in our budget for this year. There you go. There you go. So I just popped a little thing on my Facebook page this morning because I was just fascinated by this. So, that's huge. So let's talk about the fact that, and it's very apropos when I bring in Maria and Brice and we talk about what happened there with Brice and then our lawsuit. So not only is this the way we're treating parents in our school system, but not only that, I mean, we've got the vast majority of our kids who can't even read at grade level or do math at grade level. And they just I think we gave them an extra $45 million this year. So in Oklahoma, we fund failure. That's what we do. If you're failing, by God, no problem. We've got all these people sitting out here that we pick their pockets for. We'll just give them that money. Okay, I better stop because I'm getting ready to go off the rails on the crazy train. And I think I'll bring in Brice. I've noticed that. How are you this morning, Brice?
I'm well. How are you?
Well, I'm apparently getting ready to have a stroke.
How many students are publicly educated in Oklahoma?
If I remember from the last thing that I did and I looked, it was somewhere around 500,000 because that was my I put it together there's Maria. You ready to come on, Maria? Okay. Are we good? Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, there she is. All right. So Brice and I are talking about, so it was, I believe it was 500,000 students. Yeah.
My phone calculator doesn't go up to 3 billion.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just think, how in the world? I mean, I don't see how it's not funding failure.
It is funding failure.
Yeah. Just don't get it.
Well, and remember, they keep telling us that the failure is because we don't put enough money into it. And yet, when you look across the country, the one thing that has been proven is that money doesn't improve. Money per student in a classroom hasn't improved academics at all.
Study after study has shown that.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that
we still let that teachers union promote that fable, and it's almost instilled in our impulse when people talk about academic performance.
I don't even think it's teachers unions anymore. I think it's these little separate activists. Like you've got PLAC out there. They're all under this hashtag Okla Ed. And these are all the little OSSBA, COSA people, who come together and scream and yell about any kind of transparency or accountability or, and I'll never forget a Twitter argument I had online with one liberal. I don't know if it was Sean Heim. It may have been. I don't remember. That it was somebody. And basically I said, well, how much money do you need? And he said, I will let you know when we get there.
Yeah. But there's still all those little groups. It's, we have that same phenomenon, I think, on the conservative side. But all those groups on that side are fueled by somebody, and you know more about the dark money flow as anyone does, Jenny. So that's where I'm concerned. Where is that money really coming from?
Yeah.
That we can't successfully defeat that messaging.
I honestly don't understand, but we'll get off on that, on that wagon train. Or should we say circus train? We'll get off on that and never get back to our original discussion.
Well, that's true.
That's a lot of money to turn out.
You have a bug on your camera. I'm not kidding you.
I'm sorry. we got a lot of poultry, and they attract flies, I think.
Yes, chicken poop will do that. But it was just funny because it was right over you. It was like a blob ate. I went back to the 60s with the blob. Oh, the blob ate Bryce Chaffin. Okay, for those people who don't know you, Bryce Chaffin, let's talk about you for just 1 second. So you live in Stillwater, outside Stillwater, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm about 12 minutes outside of Stillwater. But I'm still in the city. I'm still, like, my address is a Stillwater address. And I'm in the school district for Stillwater.
Yeah. And you've been pretty active in politics. I mean, you've actually run for your state representative
Mm-hmm.
twice, right?
I ran twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ran
And
twice.
Dark money got you both times.
It did. Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah, especially the second time. But both times, yes.
Now you have how many kids? 4?
5 now. That's really the reason that I didn't run a third time, is because we had a surprise baby, and we don't have time to run for office and have a newborn, and he'll be 10 months next month. So
that's sweet. So what are their age ranges?
Gwenny turned 15 yesterday.
Oh, I think I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and Huck, like I said, 10 months next month. So
Is it already been 10 months?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. He's
I don't like
really
time.
fast.
Yeah, time waits for no man or baby. So you do not use the public school, is that correct?
That is correct.
So you do not have any of your kids in Stillwater Public Schools?
I do not have any of my kids in Stillwater Public Schools. I was homeschooled. My parents had me go to kindergarten at Santa Fe Elementary in Moore. And then for first grade, I started homeschooling in first grade. And so my kids are second generation homeschoolers. I did teach high school in Okima, at Okima High School. And all the other teachers thought they're like, but you don't have your kids in the schools? I was like, no. So
yeah, but you'd be surprised how many you talk to, and principals. I mean, the principal out here, his kids didn't go to these schools; they went to private schools.
Really?
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. They just won't tell you that. I mean, because they know their product stinks on ice. So
public education is the golden calf of American culture. We all worship it, and that's why there's so much money dumped into it. Because if it doesn't work, then maybe we should just put more money in it. And it's
another $45 million this year.
Yeah.
So if you don't use public school, then why do you care what happens at Stillwater Public Schools?
Well, it's my community. My children have to grow up with these kids, and they will be their fellow Okies and fellow Americans. So I mean, the Bible tells us to be the salt and light for the world. So I can't stand by idly and watch them destroy my culture. And two, they not only will they grow up around here, they'll be marrying people eventually when they grow up, and 3, my taxes are being grafted to pay for all this nonsense. And so
do you own your own home, Bryce?
I do.
No, yes. You don't.
Oh no, I rent it from Uncle Stitt.
That's a gotcha question.
Yeah, I rent my home from Uncle Stitt. And I'd rather not. I'd rather own it outright and be a free man, but there's no one that does.
But you have to pay for all those school bonds, Bryce.
Yeah, and
so you can't own your own home. Because you have to be paying for the school bonds.
Have you seen the stadium for Stillwater? I mean, Stillwater. There are a lot of school bonds and they actually. I don't know if you know this. They just claimed eminent domain on the Walls store in Stillwater.
Did they really?
Yeah, so they could tear it down and put in like a track or something.
Holy cow! Eminent domain for that.
They closed them down, and Wall said, "Well, I think this is a good run. We're not going to go anywhere else. We're just going to close our doors." So they did.
You know, and here's a weird thing: isn't the university kind of like right there? And don't they have these huge stadiums and things? And you would think that maybe the school could use the state-of-the-art facilities there and figure out a way to do that instead of keeping you from owning your property so that they can buy something else.
I think in the past,
isn't that weird?
Yeah, but people don't, the general public doesn't normally vote down on bond issues because it's with children. And so they almost always get passed, and it's just so much money.
Children.
Yeah. And speaking of OSU, they are part of the proliferation of all this because they're cranking out all the teachers that are pushing the things that we're going to talk about. And
well, and let's talk about that before we do. So, Maria, you came from New York, right?
No, I am actually a 4-state creation, Pittsburgh, Kansas. And then I went to high school and college in Joplin. And then ended up in Tulsa to go to their PhD program in English, which I transferred over then to the law school. So I'm a Tulsa, Oklahoma trained lawyer, but I was in energy. So I ended up going to various different utilities on the eastern shore. And my last job was with Dominion, which is a huge energy conglomeration. And the utility covers almost all of Virginia. So I'm an old hat at fighting progressivism and the democratic takeover of energy, supporting renewable energy and climate change, which,
let's not. That'll be another one we can't get off on.
I can tell you all the lies that go on there. But it wasn't a big step to go from energy to education.
Yeah.
They're the two largest, well, besides the tax system. So there's your 3 largest regulatory agencies.
Yeah. So you came back to Oklahoma, and then you had decided in your retirement you were going to kind of work toward helping parents navigate the education system, right?
I start because of my own grandchildren, getting real close view of this and all the complaints and people talking. And I told my husband, I said, I just started reading the school code, starting at the beginning and reading. And I go, there's some good laws here, but nobody's enforcing it. And for instance, the one that your group was such a leader on, to outlaw Common Core. So I started looking at, I have a few legal skills. Maybe I can help start enforcing the better ones, because the legislature is going crazy passing this bill, trying to stay a step ahead of the progressive takeover of the curriculum. And we don't really need new bills. We just need to enforce what we have.
Correct.
What I didn't really realize at the time was the poor state of some of that legislation.
Well, and definitely put that on a sticky note, because I want to really end this broadcast on that, because people don't know that. And we've got to really cover that in some kind of detail. So basically, do what?
To help do a better job at future legislation.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, no, I mean, that's got to be it, because there's not, never mind. Let's stick to the topic at hand here. So, Brice, Maria, I know you were kind of looking for a case to get started in, and, you were like, let's see if we can is there something out there that's happening that we can help somebody? And I was on stupid Facebook one day, and I came across Brice's post, and it was Brice talking about
getting kicked out of the school board meeting, escorted out by police.
The transgender.
And I thought that was absolutely insane. Why in the world would Brice Chaffin, who I know to be a sane person, be getting kicked out of a Stillwater School Board meeting? And then I watched this little video that you put up, and I want you to just kind of give your summary. I'm going to show this picture though, because let me throw this up here before you start, just so that people have this picture in their heads. All right. There it is. I'll make it bigger. Hang on a second. There you go. What about that? Brice, you look like some kind of a lunatic. What in the world is going on there?
Well, what led up to that was they had a boy using the girls' bathroom at Stillwater Schools, and the pastor of the Assemblies of God Church in Stillwater, his granddaughter went there and told him, or his granddaughter or his daughter told him about his granddaughter or something like that. It's been a couple of years now, so I'm having a hard time remembering who told him. But anyway, he told my friend Riley Flack, and Riley called me, and so basically word spread quickly, and the Dr. Means called. He's the chair of the Payne County Republican Party. He called an emergency meeting, and he said we need to stop this, because this is an evil thing going on right now, and we need to do three things. One, they made a website where we could have one location where everyone can report what is going on, so we can have a unified front against different various things. And two, we made a petition. First, it was an online petition, and what's that online petition website? The really popular one.
Yeah, that's the Obama one.
Yeah,
change.org.
I think that's what it was. It might have been that one. Whoever started it used that one or one of those, and it started getting signatures fairly fast, because it's not hard for people to do online stuff. And then it didn't last very long at all, and they took it down. And so Dr. Means said, well, we'll have a paper petition, and at the meeting he's like, everyone needs to take it to your church and have your church sign it. And then the third thing he said was, we all need to go to the school board meetings, the monthly school board meetings, and not just as a one and done thing, but we're going to go, all of us as a community, and not just if you really don't want to speak, at least come to show your support. But we really need a lot of people to speak, and we need to do this until the issue is resolved. Not a one and done thing, but continually every month. And so,
are you guys still doing that?
There is Dr. Means still does it, not as frequently as my dad. My dad has taken it to heart and has not missed. He missed one meeting because he had his hip replaced.
One meeting.
And well, he's missed two total. He missed one meeting because he had his hip replaced, and another meeting because it was at the same time as the Stillwater Life Services Bank fundraiser thing. So in the last, how long was this? 2 years ago?
Yeah, I believe it was.
In the last 2 years, my dad's missed two meetings. so he's been very good with it. I've after getting escorted out, then Maria advised me to stay away from there for a while, so I didn't jeopardize the lawsuit.
Right.
And after that, I have been a few more times, but not like my dad has. But Dr. Means,
let's drill down here. So and hit me where I'm wrong. I mean, correct me where I'm wrong. So you actually went to the board meeting where they were discussing the policy, because they had already had this policy in place. Pretty much every school had it.
It was part of Obama's Department of Education, probably under Title IX, So it came down as in a letter to school that if you want to continue to qualify for funds, you needed to have this policy.
Right, which is why we love federal funding for education so very much.
Here's the sinister part of this, Jenny. The Obama Education Department was using money to push this, but all the school board members were more than willing to take it on. The thing about it is, when it first started happening, they denied that it was happening, even though they were encouraging it. But when confronted, because Pastor Rhodes, the pastor of the Assemblies of God Church, and Pastor Dickey, the pastor of Hillcrest Baptist Church, they went in and they talked to everybody, and they kept getting told, no, this isn't happening here. And it's like, well, a teacher had the boy walk in on her in the bathroom, and that's how we know, is because she told Pastor Rhodes about it, and his daughter went. And anyway, so first they denied it, and then after that they said, well, it's part of the policy. And then when asked to show us the policy, there was no policy. It was, Obama said they should do it, but there was nothing really in the school's policy where they wrote it down where they had to do this. And then the superintendent, who is now a school board member, sent out an email just saying that it was a non-email, just stating what the title, whatever it is, from back in the 80s,
right,
and which doesn't push for transgenderism in the 80s, absolutely not. So their defense first is just to deny and then say, oh, well, it's there is no policy, and really there wasn't a policy. They were allowing it to happen, but the it's hard to fight something that when at first they say that's not there,
right?
And so,
for sure. So you ended up going to this meeting during which people were talking about this policy, and there was a huge number. You can see in that photo, there were a huge number of young people, looked like they were coming from Stillwater University, from OSU to me.
Yes.
And they had these signs up,
no hate in Stillwater.
Yes, because it's hateful not to have boys come in to the bathroom with girls. I've always wondered how that could be hateful, but it is to certain individuals. And so they were saying that they had these signs, and they were giving everybody 3 minutes to talk on the topic, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you began to speak, and you began your speech with a scripture, correct?
That is correct. Yes. So, okay. So this was actually the second school board meeting after everyone found out about what was going on. The first one, I was working night shift, and as it was at work during the school meeting, so couldn't go to it. And then I went online and watched the speeches and everything. And so the second one, I worked day shift and drove straight from Cushing. I work in Cushing. I worked drove straight there from work, and was trying to think of what to say. And I'm not a great speaker, especially in prom 2. So I printed off Romans 1, and my thoughts were, everyone at the first one did great. They made great arguments that this is not something we should do, but everyone was arguing from a point of, this is not safe. This is, it's a safety issue, and blah, blah, blah. And it was all just practical reasons why we shouldn't allow the boy in the girls' bathroom.
And you were more interested in the scriptural bottom line.
Well, yeah, because you can spend a lot of money and have individuals. the root of the problem is not that it's unsafe. This unsafe is a reason. Unsafe is a symptom of the root of the problem.
No, yeah, it's a heart problem, like you
Yeah.
hear people say. It's not a. So let's keep jumping. So you started speaking and you read the first part of Romans, right?
Right. Yeah. So first I actually talked about laws, physical laws, like gravity, spiritual laws, and I shared the 4 spiritual laws, which is sharing the gospel. And I said, just as there are physical laws that govern a physical universe, spiritual laws that govern our nature with God, there's also natural law. And I was trying to tie this in that a boy using the girl's bathroom and us encouraging it is against natural laws. And then I read Romans chapter 1, which it's kind of talking about natural law, but it's also talking about that these are the effects to show you that we're under the wrath of God. Anyway, and so I started reading it. Yeah, I started reading Romans chapter 1, and they actually were grunting and fidgeting and making noises before I even got to that. But when I started getting to Romans 1, that's when they started trying to tell me that I had to get on topic. And we're talking about transgenderism, and Romans chapter 1 is
they
of homosexuality.
They actually told you to stop. I mean, they were fidgeting, They were making noises. If people want to watch the video, it's still up on our.
We broke that down in our case, right?
Yeah.
Because if you really look at the portion of Brice's speech that actually got recorded, that he was allowed to give. It's in a traditional sermon style, the large framework of the world, and then you go down to the specific rules in the Bible, which was Romans. Well, the first part about the framework, they could tell it was religious, and that's when they first interrupted him and said, "You're not on topic," because he wasn't going straight to the bathroom. And then the second part, right after he quotes, where God created male and God created female, that's when they turned his mic off. Right after that, which once he said that line, it should have been clear that he was going to talk about transgenderism.
Well, he was going to talk about boys in the girls' bathrooms, right?
Yeah, it was clear.
Which was the topic. And
if you play that in front of almost average audiences. Now, and I did in front of a group of they were Republicans, but still, they knew exactly where he was going with this. Right. We already knew that the big topic was the transgender bathroom topic.
Right.
So there's no excuse that they were ignorant and that this wasn't on topic, and that he had another minute to tie it up.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. They removed you when you had 1 minute and 6 seconds left to talk, right?
Yes. And back to what Maria was saying about them knowing what I was talking about. One of the guys that you can hear saying, Mr. Bright, Mr. Chaffin, you were told to stop.
Yes.
That was Marshall Baker, and he goes to Sunnybrook Church. He still does. Do you know what his position is, his job is? He's the vice president of an organization that their purpose is to promote LGBTQ stuff. He's the school board member, and he's the vice president. Wow. So that's his job, is to do this kind of stuff. And not only his job, but he's the boss.
Did that come out during our lawsuit, Maria?
This is the first time I've heard of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I probably should. I don't know what I've told, what happened, but yeah, you can go on the website and gives the description and everything. And yeah, he's the vice president. So.
And he was sitting on the school board.
Correct. So he goes to Sunnybrook Church regularly, and so he knew what I was getting at.
Well, but obviously he had a different agenda, even though he was sitting on a school board. So the bottom line is they just kept talking over you. They talked over you. And finally they removed you before your time was up. They wouldn't even let you take the time to quote unquote get on topic, as they said. They just wanted you out of there. And they actually had you removed by the Stillwater police officer who was there to just keep order, basically. And he walked you outside, right?
Yeah, there were two of them. You can actually see the other one.
Oh yes, right.
A little
Yeah,
up in the foreground. But yeah, only one of them really put his hand on me. But yeah, there were two of them
over making comments at a school board meeting.
Right. Making comments, reading the Bible. I mean, the very first law in America was the old regarding public, or not really public education, just regarding education, was the old Diluter Satan law. And that was the purpose of that, was so we could read the Bible, so we don't fall under these delusions from the old Diluter.
Right.
So it's ironic that the very thing that the first education law was sent to create, it was the reason I was escorted out. So
yeah.
But
so
I point out here is about the fact that they didn't let him finish, and he never got to talk about transgenderism. He never got to raise that topic.
Yeah.
Was because they saw that they had the power to decide what was in Brice's mind and that where he was going.
Well, I think the worst part of this whole story isn't even just that happened to Brice. So let's go to the lawsuit. So Maria, the first thing that you did was file a First Amendment claim against the school board in Stillwater, correct?
Well, we filed a petition in state court, yes, over the Stillwater city and district. Under the Religious Freedom Act that Oklahoma enacted not that long ago. Yep. And Oklahoma should be very proud that they passed that law. It strengthens the religious right under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and the constitutional right freedom under the Oklahoma Constitution. And
not for us though so much.
Well, not the way the court interpreted, but it protected us in the long run, Jenni, as far as attorney fees go. But it is a very good, strong law. Unfortunately, we live not just in a culture that has gotten a good hold on our schools, but also a very good hold on our judiciary and the power that they have over how our laws are implemented. And that should be a warning, although it does seem like there's been a passe attitude about what the courts did relative to Brice's rights. And I'm so sorry about that, because that law, from looking at other freedom of religion cases, it is so much better. It's so much more protective of us. And yeah, we let it take a huge hit.
Yeah.
So
you file, and then we came before a judge the first time. So we all went to court. Let's see if I can find the other picture of us after we had all been to court there in Stillwater. Here we are. That's at least one of them. So we went to court, and what happened there, Maria?
Well, there were several procedural steps, kind of the preliminary motions that happen before you actually get to discovery in a trial. And one of it was the school district's attorney, which happens to be the education firm for 300 of the 500 school districts in Oklahoma.
And who are they paid by? By whom are they paid? So who pays the salaries of these attorneys that sit in the pocket of the school and fight against parents like Brice?
Well, it's the school district pays them via their budget, which we know comes from that pile of dollars you talked about at the beginning with, the taxpayers.
So the bottom line, I think, in this whole thing, and we'll get just 1 second, I just wanted to bring this home. If we are going to sue a public school, we are going to have to use our tax dollars. We're going to have to use our own dollars out of our own pockets to sue a school over something like what happened to Brice, which was just ridiculous. It never should have gotten that far. Never. And we're going to have to use our own money. Yet the school is using our own money to defend themselves. And in cases like this particular group of attorneys attack the parents. So to me, that's just absolutely obscene. And the bottom line root of all of the problem, why do they care how much time and effort they put in? Didn't we add it up and it's cost something like $55,000 to the taxpayer?
Yeah, we didn't just add it up, they did. Because after we lost the trial court, they came after Brice and ROPE for their attorney fees. So they asked the court to award them for almost $45,000 in attorney fees. And this is where we get into trouble because I work pro bono. I did all of this for free. And if there wasn't for somebody, and there are a lot of firms, I shouldn't say a lot, there's several nonprofit public interest law firms, like the one that won the Supreme Court case for the coach who was preying on field. Yeah. There's several there, but they're very hard to get to represent every day.
Because they're inundated with cases.
Yeah. We went to them. We went to several looking for some help to take this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they all turned us down. And once we hit that need to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, it went beyond my capability as legal overwatch to fund this. Just to get our petition for cert, I may be getting ahead of you, but we looked at the cost just to file a petition for cert. Because you have to hire a very special printing company that knows how to do the rules. They're very, very specific. And just to get that petition printed, that first step was going to cost us at least $5,000 to $10,000, not counting, the rest of the work that we'd have to do if the court gave us cert. And so the judicial system has outpriced the ability of everyday people to defend their civil rights. We just can't afford it.
Say that one more time, because I think that's huge. It costs between $5,000 and $10,000 just to print the paper that we would.
Around $5,000 for the printing, and then you add some of the other things you have to do, the court filing and everything, and then you're going to need to have upfront about $10,000. That's because I'm free, right? If you had to go, we had to go and get a law firm specializing in Supreme Court. Their fees are going to be probably more like $300 to $500 an hour. But just for the printing of the petition for cert, like I said, was going to be about $5,000. So yeah.
So how does anybody be able to afford the judicial to navigate? How can anybody afford to navigate the judicial system in America now? I don't have $10,000 just sitting around waiting to.
And here we have Brice sitting here. His case is clearly the court in the holdings that they did clearly violated constitutional law, violated our leading constitutional cases on the exercise of religion, and yet we can't afford to do anything. And if you want to know why government is running over citizens, it's because of the judicial system, the activism that has promoted it, that makes it so risky to have to defend those rights. And Oklahoma has a few laws. They have a citizen participation, but the way they're drafted, it's like a lot of the laws I see even today. They're what I call headline bills, because they touch on the subject that we're concerned with. But when as a lawyer looking at them going, what good is this going to do? Because this doesn't give me any teeth in it to even go to court to argue for at least attorney fees if I were to win. And our judicial appointments in Oklahoma are such that the bar controls them. And I'm not talking about, this is true in every state. Lawyers are more progressive, generally Democrats, and they control really who gets appointed in the appellate and the Supreme Court level. And otherwise, we elect judges, but where do they get their money to run?
From more lawyers.
And I honestly have to say, I was one of those voters, like, well, who should I vote for judge? I didn't know them. And so the only people that know them are the plaintiff bar and the defense bar, which are Democrats. Yeah. So we really, where we need to start cleaning houses, if I can give one admin, warning to conservatives, we got to start cleaning our judicial system out.
Well, and let me jump off of that. So the very first judge that we had in Stillwater, that story ties in perfectly to what you were saying. So what happened with that first judge, and what did you learn about that judge later on?
Well, I believe in the rule of law, and I was really excited what I thought Legal Overwatch could do until I filed this case. And we had that judge. It wasn't bad at the beginning when they filed dismiss, you need to dismiss this case because they said, one, it was a tort, which maybe people don't understand.
Well, and people aren't going to, that'll go over their head, but basically the judge.
Main point is it's a law that prevents parents from suing the government unless you meet very specific conditions. So, but we got past that. So I thought we're okay. But it turns out that this judge had I still don't know what he really ruled on, because he didn't write an opinion. All he did at the end of the day, when we filed our summary for summary judgment, we thought the tape, the video was it. We didn't need anything else. You could see it right there on the screen.
Right.
All the facts and everything you needed to know was right there on the screen. And yet they found some very weak arguments, and the judge bought them and just waved his hand and said, found for the school district. And that was the end of the case. He didn't write why. He didn't say, what was wrong with our arguments. We had no roadmap for his decision. He just found. And he made that decision 2 weeks before he retired, which may have made him feel like he had some freedom. He's going to be out of it anyway. And this way, I'm going to be really sneered. Well, I can go have, hang out and play golf with my buddies in the local power.
So 2 weeks before he retires, he makes this judgment, and then we decided that we were going to go appeal that, correct?
So now they have 2 ways to appeal where you can actually fight the decision, but because ours was pretty much straightforward and the evidence was straightforward, they wouldn't let it. We didn't have a second bite at the apple in proving our case and making our arguments. They took the record as it was presented at the trial court level. They just took the record on its face. And there wasn't even a transcript in ours, because we would have had to pay for the transcript. And again, we're thinking this is pretty straightforward on the facts. So they just took all of our pleadings on both sides and the judge's decision, which had no opinion to it. And then they made a decision on whether there was any legal error in that for us to have the decision reversed. And they printed an opinion, which to me is abhorrent. If people who really believe in our freedom of religion under the Constitution understood its implications, they would be more fearful about Oklahoma. I have to say, you look at that and you wouldn't think we were a red state.
Can I interject on the state of the lawyers? Maria, do you remember when Jeremiah took us in and was talking to us about our first judge, how he was an activist judge?
Yeah.
He was so bad that some of the stand-up lawyers in Stillwater.
I hate to use conservative when you're talking about people who practice laws. What we're broken down more into is originalists and how we view the Constitution and the rule of law, and those activists who something feels unfair, so they're going to do what they think would be more fair, which is dangerous. And you're right. There were people that came after that case, had been watching it, who told us we never had a chance in the first place because he was so activist. He would have found any basis for ruling for the school district.
Yeah. And then even when we got to the appellate court, the only judge that was appointed by a Republican governor recused herself.
Well, the one that did write a dissent, Brice, was one of those Republicans.
Oh, really?
Everybody else was appointed by a Democrat. And yes, they found that the trial judge had not committed any legal errors for them to reverse them on. The two things that people need to pay attention to is, one, they bought the defendant's argument, the school board's argument, that they had no religious bias when they shut Brice down, that they shut him down under their regulation and their authority to keep order. And since he wasn't talking on topic, that gave them the authority to shut him down. It had no religious bias. And they tried to prove that by saying, look at all these other parents who came in and made religious statements out of that policy, contravening their religious faith. Well, I mean, that's the case on a lot of things. You find the one person that might be the most vulnerable, or you find the person that might carry more political sway, and you shut them down first so that the rest will go away. And having him escorted on tape was was intimidation, and that's what it was used for. But yeah, let's have a vote. Who got to speak? And it also denies the fact that a lot of people, when we talk about our religious convictions, we've been trained to be very timid out there.
That's true.
So, this allows them to kind of corral us and keep us, keep our comments. And if we're going to make comments, that we do it in a certain way. I'm not saying those people were sheepish, but when you listen to Brice, he is, and I put some pictures up and tried to make sort of a meme on this, but he is your John the Baptist. And we didn't see a lot of John the Baptist in Jesus' time, heads being cut, because people they understood, and could stand behind that line when they made statements. But John the Baptist called a sin, told Herod, you're a sinner. And, Herod and his wife and all didn't like it. Well, that's exactly what you have here. And I think people should celebrate that Brice was there speaking scripture to sin and trying to evangelize what the school board was doing. And I think that, and noticing that he was a political leader, even though he hadn't won an election, he had been out there campaigning. So if you're going to shut somebody down, who are you going to shut down?
Well, it's interesting. So Julia says government finds that government did no wrong, which is, essentially what we have here. And I think it's the bottom line. But the bottom line here, because we're coming up on an hour and I want to hit a couple of the other points pretty hard. We got nowhere. The Oklahoma Supreme Court, we had to take it to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, this particular lawsuit, got nowhere there. And we're going to have to take it to the U.S. Supreme Court if we were going to get anywhere. And we just, can't afford to do that. And I think when you look at this whole thing, the school board had said you have 3 minutes to speak. Brice went to, it's all on video. Everybody can see it. It's linked in our pages, the video, so you can see it. Brice went to the microphone. He was speaking just like he is today on this podcast, very calmly, very quietly. There was nothing overly obtrusive about him or anything. He wasn't angry. He wasn't pounding the desk. He wasn't doing anything. He was just reading. And this school board, this group of people fidgeted in their chairs. You could hear them making all these kinds of noises. Well, you need to stop. Stop. Well, you stop. Before his time was even up. So here's the thing. If you're going to give everybody 3 minutes, you shut the hell up and listen to what the people have to say for 3 minutes. And if they're doing it reasonably and quietly, and they're the ones paying your salaries, you be quiet and you listen to what they have to say. So all of this was kabuki theater. All of it was way over the top drama, just because of the fact that these are all liberal people who are activists, and activists are emotional people who are not reasoned at all. And they couldn't even sit quietly and listen to the comments. As a taxpayer, Brice has the right to speak. He has the right to speak at that meeting. And if he's not making any kind of a scene, there's no reason for them not to allow him to speak. There's no law in Oklahoma that says that you can't read the Bible at a public meeting. In fact, this law that we sued the school district on protects the right to do that kind of a thing. So all of this was an easy open and shut case that was killed because of an activist judge in Stillwater, and then a group of people on the state Supreme Court who would not go out on a limb at all to protect the religious rights of somebody in this state. Does that basically sum everything up?
Yeah, that sure does. They're trying to use a rule, and it's not even a rule. It's their own policy that structures how public comments should be for purposes of keeping order. And yet they caused more disruption by sending the police and escorting him out, cutting all that, than if they just closed their eyes and ignored what he said, but give him his 3 minutes. And I would warn parents or the public who want to speak. I think that the rules, the standards, policies I've seen around public comments is a violation of free speech, because it's supposed to be that those rules are non-content rules. You can't control topics, but what they did to Brice was control this topic. And you may want to split for purposes of tracking comments between those that apply to a specific agenda item and those who are just general. But if I can speak on anything in the general, then, and I happen to put it in, let us speak for 3 minutes. Nothing's going to be heard. You can't reply. You don't even have to consider what we're saying.
And we know they don't.
Yeah. And that's why when people say, well, I'm going to go to the school board meeting, and go, why? Because I know where it goes in a plan. We need that's a law that you never see discussed, but we need a law that goes directly to the point of public comments. We need an expansion of the Open Meetings Act that is designed, I think, for school boards. Because the Open Meetings Act applies to all these bigger state agencies, but school boards are not those, and they're very uniquely, they're supposed to consider parents, and they're not. So we need an Open Meeting Act that has to do with school board meetings that protect our rights.
It's so interesting too, because you can make the taxation without representation argument with school boards, so many school boards. And certainly in Brice's case, I mean, he's taxed whether he wants to be or not to pay for these schools. And yet you can't talk because we don't like what you are going to say. And I think that was the other thing about Brice. To me, it was very obvious that they just didn't like Brice. I mean, he'd already run twice as a Republican for the House seat. They knew who he was. They didn't want to hear anything he had to say. So it was very specific because, again, the judge says, well, there were other people who talked about religious items. It wasn't just Brice. I mean, that's what the school district, what Stillwater Public Schools attorneys argued. Yeah. So I think part of it was they just didn't like him. And because they can do whatever they want to do, they just decide, okay, well, we don't like him. We'll just, cut him off for some reason.
My husband, who's a lawyer, we've had this debate, and I know a lot of people are saying, why didn't they sue for a violation of free speech? And that was an option. But I have to say, people wanting to represent to their officials, we have the sincere religious belief and the lack of respect that our elected officials are giving to that. I think that's an issue that needs more said about it, needs more protection. And I really thought this was a slam dunk when you really look. If people go back and look at the Oklahoma Religious Freedom Act, and you look at the Oklahoma's Constitution, which says you can't even molest anybody for doing something that's based on their religion. I am still so floored at how this case was decided.
I think I'm no lawyer, so I don't, can't put anything on what I think about law stuff, but I almost wonder if we probably could win with freedom of speech case. And I also, at the same time, am 100% convinced that Maria took us in the correct direction with the religion thing, because there's freedom of speech cases are a dime a dozen, and it's the freedom of religion that's being attacked so much. And I mean, Oklahoma, we have a choice if we want to protect that or not. And I mean, it's not the freedom of speech, like I said, that's not.
I appreciate what you're saying. And then here's where we are. We are complaining. I'm trying to raise a red flag about the judiciary in Oklahoma. But at the end of the day, we didn't get to take this all the way because we didn't have funds. And this case was reported on. Maybe we needed more light on it. I don't know, but it was out there. And at the end of the road is the apathy of even conservatives in this state to pay attention to what's going on in the judicial system. They'll put all kinds of money behind getting those nasty books out of the library, and that's a worthy cause. But your ability to worship as you want is much more crucial, because if you can't defend that, you're never going to get the books out. You talk about root causes, and yet there was nobody. I had one person who has been somewhat of a supporter of legal overwatch that we've used on my Open Meeting Act case, for instance. but nobody came forward really to support Brice or to support this case.
Right.
And when you talk to people, they don't even know what the issues were, other than it was freedom of religion. So conservatives, the judiciary and legal cases are very important. They're as important as anybody else you can elect. And I can guarantee you that case would have had much more effect than whether you one person, A or B, wins a primary.
Yeah.
So, I hate to wag my finger at the people who I know are, still trying to protect the foundation of our culture, but you guys fell down on this one.
Yeah.
If I can be critical, Jenni, of a lot of your viewership.
Yeah. Well, I honestly do believe people, one of the ways in which the Marxist communists were going to drive society was by over inundating them with information. And that became misinformation, during COVID. And we talk a lot about that, now. But just the influx of constant streams of information, it makes it impossible for people to focus on anything. And when you're just trying, and now, they're attacking the middle class so that we're overtaxed now. Although we did get our grocery taxes. We still don't own our homes in Oklahoma, but by God, we can get a few pennies off of our groceries. Thank you, benevolent legislature. But
I want to make one more line drawing for the conservatives.
Sure.
Yeah. Because, you talk about those books. This school board that went after Brice and then wanted to charge taxpayers $45,000. That school board has been the school board that over the Stillwater schools, where in the last several years, there's been 2 pedophiles arrested and being tried. And they were in that school system for more than a year.
Yeah.
And one of them, the pedophiles was
Sean
the one that he's the one that organized the teacher walkout.
Right, the 7th grader. But yeah. I will point this: pedophile to transgender, there's a connection there of their attitude towards the sexual lines that used to be in our culture. And people ought to be looking at these school board members about their moral conduct or their moral beliefs. Because if you didn't report these guys, because it's evidence that the school knew about this and they didn't report it, which is against the law in itself.
It is. There's a mandatory reporting law.
But they're not following that. Well, they're going to feel empowered to kick people out for reading the Bible, and they're going to double up on keeping Christians out of the school. And the next line I would draw is this Chaffin bill that was, I know a lot of conservatives were really for that bill, but came out, I belong to the Asbury Methodist Church. And, we got kicked out of the United Methodist Church because we refused to move from scripture regarding the LBD.
Right.
After that, and you watch where they go. I want to remind people, it's not the Satanists you have to worry about. These people are not just wanting to come to take over our schools. They're going to take over the church. And we have to start thinking about what the term Christian, what the definition is there. Because these people are chaplains, they're certified, they're licensed, they're educated chaplains, and they do not believe the way the traditional Christian believes. And they're going to be the ones that are in those schools, in those chaplain positions. So we got to be really careful when we're talking about Christian values. We are really losing that battle. I had some concerns with the community standard that was adopted by the state school board meeting. That Ryan has been, look what we did. those community standards, when you have Episcopalians, Lutherans, and now the Methodist Church opening the door to the transgender world. But
you know what? I'm gonna one up you on that too, because we have equal access, and the ACLU will come in constantly and argue for for equal access. And you look at what happened to Iowa. They allowed the Christians to come in and put a Christmas display in the Capitol, and then the Satanists took them to court and said the Satanists would need to come in too. And I think the problem that we have, not just with what you said, because I agree with that. What does Christianity mean to you? What does that even mean anymore? I mean, you can say you're a Christian, but I don't think we may not agree on what that actually, constitutes. So there's not only that, there's the fact that the equal access thing, once those chaplains go into a public school, then you can call them a Christian chaplain, but then, Muslims get to bring an imam in, or, whatever that is. And then it just becomes even more confusing. And my bottom line is this: school is not the place for any of that stuff.
I agree with you.
Public school for reading, writing, arithmetic, science, period. Arts, I'll go with arts because I think arts are wonderful. That's it. I don't want any other crap in there. I don't want any nonsense. It's not your place to put anything in there other than the basic stuff. And guess what? You can't even do that well. So why do we need any of that, any of the rest of this stuff?
We talk about local control, and when I was running for school board, and they want to know, are you for local? I said, definitely for local control. But to me, that means we kick out all of these vendors.
That's right.
National vendors that, are progressive. They want all this CRT. They want they're the ones that are putting this into the books, into the curriculum. So let's kick them out. Let's make our principals and our teachers write their own curriculum where they're reflecting their neighborhood. There is one bill that came out relative to your open access, and I wish people would look at it, because I've started doing some research to help to see if this is a movement Legal Overwatch could support, and that is time release programs. Where the churches can partner with a school, as long as the school system doesn't pay for any of it, but you can get students released for an hour as a class to go to the church and take a Bible study
and see.
And I think we could take that foundation, because what we really need to do is not try to put church into the schools. We need to get the children into the church, and we need to show them it's not a hateful group. And this is an opportunity where we can, I know a lot of the conservatives know David Barton, but he's got some great history. If we could get one of his history into a curriculum and get an APA approval, so students can take that class for their history and get AP credit for it, that shows the role of Christianity and how we help move the abolition movement, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. So they have a different view of how Christians participate in society. Or we could have an alternative class on marriage and family in the Christian under Christian philosophy, or whatever you want to call it, but a Christian marriage and family class to compete against sex education. And students can go, and like our Asbury church is right across from Union. So
well, and I think the competing, I think you've said it just right, because they force the sex education. Tulsa is particularly just abhorrent about it. They force the worst, most degraded sex education stuff on kids. And, kids should be able to opt out and go do something else. But I think that there's been a lot of talk, and I've heard our state superintendent say this numerous times, and I'm in complete disagreement. I mean, 100% disagreement. We need to get prayer back in schools. We need to, all of this kind of thing. There is a separation between church and state, and there is a separation between church and state for a reason. Because once the state infects the church, there is no getting the church back. There isn't. You don't want the state infecting the church. You have that wall between the state and the church, not to keep people from being able to do anything inside the state, but to keep the state from infecting the church. And if anybody's ever read the book Bonhoeffer,
Eric Metaxas,
and Eric Metaxas, who wrote Bonhoeffer. But if you and he's got a letter to the church that I haven't read yet, which I need to put on my list and get read. But he did such a great job of talking about Bonhoeffer's belief in that separation of church and state. And that he said, and I'll never forget this because I thought it was so fascinating. He said, and this is when the Germans, took over the church. Remember, they became the state religion. The Nazis did. They took the church over and it became a state religion. And he said, this isn't going to work for me because you have to have on the outside, you have to have the people as a church actually keeping the state in line. And if you blur that boundary, the people outside the church and the church cannot affect the state and make the state do the right thing. So
our real problem is Christians not raising their children to be spiritual warriors. And I'm terrible at names, but the three boys, that faced the fire, that walked into the fire, and
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
We don't have those. I can't tell you how many parents have called me about a problem, but they don't want to go all the way because their kids are going to be embarrassed. Their kids are afraid of being retaliated in school. Right. And that's why I say we need to bring children into the church to teach them, you may be attacked, you may be persecuted, but God loves you and God will take care of you. If we can't strengthen these kids to stand up to some ridicule in the public schools, we're failing as a church. And if they're that way, just take them out. I mean, there was a gentleman, and I wish I thought of it because he just did a documentary somebody's bragging about. But his line is, if you're a Christian, you take your kids out. Because he doesn't see the ability to ever change the public school character. And I would say the fact that our children are so more intimidated and their mind control is coming from the school and their peers shows that we need to take our kids out and get them more spine, help them strengthen their spine, because there are going to be some tough days ahead if they're going to defend their freedom.
Have you read Indoctrinating Our Children to Death by Alex Newman?
No, I haven't read that yet. No.
Good book. It's a very good book. The foreword's by the former Education Secretary of Arizona. And she talks about how she really was trying to reform the schools there. And Alex Newman goes by and starts in the history of how state government education started. It started with the first guy was back in the 1840s, made a commune in Indiana. The next guy, Horace Mann, is like, even though that commune failed, it failed because the adults grew up too individualistic, that we need to have an education system that gives us a communal mindset. And and then the next guy, John Dewey, the Horace Mann, his model got picked up by the king of Prussia, who, being a king, he's like, you know what, we're going to put this all over Prussia. So they implemented state government schools. And then John Dewey, and just think about what country was it that had government schools that taught?
He went overseas and did a study.
Yeah, there's a country like about 100 years after that murdered a bunch of people because of humanistic beliefs.
The conformity was
Nazi Germany, and so anyway, John Dewey, he took it a step farther, and he's called the father of the American public education, and he was a communist. Like he was
actually a card-carrying member of the party. Yes.
What for reading? You were talking about reading, writing, arithmetic, the 3 R's. He took out phonics out of reading for sight reading, to teach sight reading, after it had been proven that it didn't work, and we're pumping out people who had all sorts of learning disabilities after that because of sight reading, like dyslexia and whatnot.
Yeah,
he knew that, and he did not want them to be educated. No. So anyway, the whole point of that book is the public schools are not failing. The public schools are doing exactly what they were designed to do. And
I like the story in Mass where they started, because public education was in response to the Catholic Church having all the schools for the poor immigrants, specifically Irish, and they did not like the drunken fighting Irish to be raising children. So it was their way to get children away from their parent. It was meant to be divisive in the family. Yeah.
And hey, careful about the whole Irish thing. All I do is fight. I'm not a big drinker. So.
Well, that sounds more like my husband who talks about this. We have the sign, no need to apply. But yeah, public education is about conformity. It wasn't about meeting I think it betrays one of my favorite Bible verses, and that is when God says, I have known you since you were in your mother's womb. I have a plan for you. And children are forgetting that they are God's divine, he put a divine spark in them with their own individual plan, with their own potential. And education was all about creating a workforce for the modern assembly line coming in. It was not about kindling that spirit.
Well, we know that to be true too, because what does our governor like more than anything? Workforce training. Workforce, he goes over. We've done a whole show on that and about how all of this is to get kids not educated, not well-rounded, but funneled into jobs, so that the elitists have, peons that they can rely on to continue to make them, more money. So all of this is, public education is nonsense. It's nonsense. And now that we've given a tax credit, we've done this whole voucher thing. Now the state owns private schools who have gotten into that. So we're whittling it down to the point where unless you homeschool and you just fight tooth and nail to keep that, our choices are bupkis here in Oklahoma.
That's the only way.
We just don't have them.
Oh, for Oklahoma, the only way to save Oklahoma and America is for a man and a woman to have children and not put them in the indoctrination camps. And that doesn't mean being reclusive and not getting involved in a community. There's other kids that are going through that indoctrination, and so you still need to speak up. And
in the world of the world.
But that's the only way. We're only one generation from losing our freedom, and I see that as the next generation.
Yeah.
Jenni, have you seen that movie? One of the series of God Is Not Dead, and this particular movie is called We the People.
I know, I haven't seen that one.
Please watch it. I'm not going to say it's a great movie, right? But it is the story of a little homeschool environment. The church kind of supports this, neighborhood cooperative school. and they're teaching Bible and stuff. And it is about how the state comes in and watches what was going on, and then finds that they're violating all kinds of curriculum issues and fines them big bucks.
Yeah.
And then they go to the federal government to have a hearing on whether the federal government should do something. So you get all the issues that I have been listening to you talk about, during this whole homeschool debate. And I just think you would appreciate, and it's a good educational for people who don't think the state will do that.
Yeah.
And
if they don't think the state will do that, they just need to look at some. Oh my gosh, I had a friend who was in New Hampshire. The homeschooling regulations there are crazy. I have a friend in New York. It's the same thing there. Oklahoma is one of the, right now, Oklahoma is the most free state for homeschoolers. And you actually talk to people and they say, we literally moved from another state to come to Oklahoma because you're so friendly.
Except they're scared to death now. You see them. But if people want to see how easy it is to sneak this control in, that's a good movie. I'm also interested to see how it plays out, where they're withholding people's voucher money because they owe taxes.
Yeah.
And that is a way for them to deplete, because there's a cap on how much they will use for vouchers. And this is depleting that voucher because they're getting credit for it. They just don't get it.
Right.
So the next family won't get any money because we ran out, because they're withholding it all for back taxes.
Gosh, a cynic would think to themselves, gosh, I wonder if these people who are in charge of picking parents to get the vouchers aren't looking these people up to find out if they have back taxes and then going ahead and giving them the vouchers because it's a win-win.
Yeah. They always judge. I just sort of laugh at people who say, well, we need some control because otherwise parents will take it and won't spend it on education. And I go, well, the schools are taking our money and not spending it on education.
Look at the ultimate control. The ultimate control is the public education, and they are the worst. The more control the government has, the worse you get.
Yeah.
I believe that kids want an education. They want to be able to have a decent job. They want to be able to read and write. And if their parents aren't teaching it to them because they're drug addicts or whatever, they're gonna find a place to go learn it. It may be the neighborhood church, especially if we have, or it may be that they're going and they're getting something. But I think the natural instinct that God gave us to want to read and to want to learn about the world around us will be a countermeasure against the parents that these people are criticizing. We have to do a little bit of trust, on this, because government solutions are never the right one.
No, never. Certainly not. It would be nice if we could have a government solution that would fix roads without being the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. That would be nice if the government would actually do what we're supposed to be having them do. If they would stick to that, then we would be fine. But outside of that, they couldn't do anything right. Well, guys, we're coming up on 1 hour and 30 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and
plug. If you're a parent and you really have a problem with your school district and you're not sure whether there's a way around it, you're not sure how to handle it, and you can look it up on Facebook, Legal Overwatch. You can send me a private message. Our phone is listed there. Feel free to call me. I can't take a lot more court cases, but we can help you with letters to the school district with the right legal language to kind of, ring their bell a little bit. So please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Maria. We do appreciate you, and thank you, for all you've done for Oklahoma. It's very appreciative, and I know it's been a very frustrating job, and I know it's been very frustrating for so many of us who thought that if we just got involved, something would, we would be able to get some control back. So I get it. But Maria, thank you so much for being with us today and talking about this.
I appreciate your platform. So thank you, Jenni.
Well, thank you very much. And Brice, so good to see you again. And, thanks for sticking this out with us. And thanks for homeschooling all those kids.
I'll thank my wife for that one. So.
Keep spreading the word.
Exactly. All right, guys. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate you being with us today. And we'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. So I hope that, we've had quite a number of people on the podcast today, in and out, and I really appreciate that. I do hope if you took anything away from this podcast, it was that we're in deep, deep trouble here, and we have let the genie out of the box, and there's no putting the genie back in. And in my particular opinion, there's no fixing it other than to just say, you know what, if you don't actually educate children, then we're not going to give you any money. But the problem is that we have a set of parents who idolize public education. They idolize public school. They want their kids in sports. They want to go get Friday night lights. And in reality, I know you think that that's great. And, I've had kids in sports and it's fun to go watch them. And I get that. It's not, but there are private sports that you can do that. We don't have to make the school the center of our sports focus, such that then what's happened is we don't really have a school that we don't have schools that we don't go to see kids being on academic team or to do mock trial, or we don't do that. It's not like Friday night mock trial. We don't do that. Sports are great for developing all kinds of different skills, but they're skills. It's not education. It's not the same thing. And schools at this point, if they don't educate children, and they're not doing that. It's all over the nation, but particularly in Oklahoma, we're just not doing that. They need, if they can't educate kids, they should get none of our tax dollars. And I think that we know that that's true because we hear the state superintendent say something like that. And then you hear the whole other side, the leftist, I'll tell you when it's enough money for public school side, have fits, run circles around screaming. It's unbelievable how much people today do not want accountability in public education. They want the money, but they're not all that interested in churning out kids who actually know something, because that would really be defeating to the purpose of turning out an uneducated populace that will do whatever people want them to do. So I do hope that at some point you see, when you look at this video and you put 2 and 2 together and realize the schools are using our own tax dollars when we're having to use our dollars to sue them for anything that goes on. They win. It's a win-win. We lose. We can't even afford to take these cases any further because it's $5,000 just to print something off for the Supreme Court. In all honesty, we're at the point now where government holds all the cards. They just flat do. And until we decide we've had enough, they're going to keep doing it. And you're going to keep wondering what's going on. Put 2 and 2 together, guys. Figure it out. It's not that hard. Government holds all the cards, but the problem is we fund it. At some point, we're going to have had enough and say, that's it. I'm not going to take it anymore. I hope that you've enjoyed the podcast today. If you have and you're not a usual watcher, please go to our channels on YouTube and Rumble and pick through and see what you can find. Right now, our series, the work that we're doing right now is basically picking out government tyranny and pushing it in your face so that you can see how bad it is. We have gotten to the point where we legitimately can consider ourselves living in a tyranny, even in Oklahoma, while people talk about what a red state we are. All you have to do is look at the budget. Look at that billions of dollars in the budget and the nearly $4 billion we're putting into education in Oklahoma today. So thank you for tuning in. Really, again, appreciate you tuning in. Go back and find our channels and watch through. Also, too, you'll note that it says Jenni at rope2.org. If you will visit rope2.org, you can also sign up for our newsletter. I make sure to get the videos in, little snippets of the videos in. So if you didn't have time to watch it, you can just see the snippets. If you'll subscribe to the newsletter, it'll come to you on Mondays. So consider that. Also, too, please go to our Patreon page. It's Reclaim Oklahoma Parent Empowerment. If you'd like to support us in what we do, we would really appreciate it, even though I know that it comes to you for free. It's not a free deal, and we do fund it. We do have to fund it, including the streaming package that we're using right now. So thank you again for being with us. Please note on the 31st, on Friday, we will have a replay. It's a rope replay on wind turbines in Oklahoma. You're going to want to watch that. You're going to want to watch that. So make sure you catch that on Friday. And then when we come back the week after that, we'll be actually only broadcasting live on Wednesdays throughout the summer. And then we'll pick it back up mid-August, back on our regular schedule of Wednesdays and Fridays live. But we love to be live when you can actually comment and give us your questions and comments. So we do love that. Thanks again for being with us. And then we will see you. Gosh, we'll see you, I guess, next week, right? Yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in.